Hi, I'm Mike Kassel, the tutorial coordinator at U of M Flint, and what I want to talk about today is the essential academic skills for university students. Now, this isn't really a program in which I'm telling you what to do, but what I want to tell you is what the top students have been doing and how they succeed in college. So hopefully these will be some skills that you can pick up and that you can adapt to your own learning. The first thing that you need to know about college life is that things happen fast. You'll notice that semester goes really quickly. So it's really good when you have some time, some breathing room at the beginning of the semester, that you want to map out your semester. And there's two ways of doing this. The first is to make a really big semester calendar. And I'm talking kind of old school, making, take like 4 pieces of typing paper, or that really went old school with typing, of copy paper, of printer paper, and tape them together and make a large calendar that you can put on your door in your room, that you can put on the refrigerator, wherever you can see it, and put down the 4 months of your major semesters, the 2 months of your spring and summer semesters, and just map out from your syllabus everything that's due on the dates that it's due, so that you can have at one glance a look at all of the things that you need to do for that semester. That will keep you on target. It will let you know what's coming up. And I know that nowadays you can put all this stuff in your phone or in some sort of planner or whatever, and a planner is a good thing to do, but just having it, that visual of having it in one place all the time, is a really good way to keep you on target. The one thing I would say is that for the most motivated students, sometimes seeing all the things at a glance can kind of really make you anxious. The idea is not to make you anxious about it, and what you want to do is look at it from a week-to-week basis, or sometimes in a long-term basis. But the idea is not to make you anxious about all the things you have to do, but to let you know ahead of time. The one other thing I would say about that semester calendar is, don't just write down what you have to do, but when the assignments are available ahead of time, take a look at what's required in those. Because the last thing you want to do is have that last semester assignment there and think, oh, okay, good, I've got a week, or I've got 2 days to do it. And then you look at it and it's like this thing that's going to require a lot of work. So you want to have an idea also of what those assignments are, as well as when they're coming by. The other thing, though, too, is this idea of making a weekly calendar. And you don't have to keep this all semester like you're going to do your semester calendar, but the idea is to map out what you're doing each day and where you are each day. When are you in class? When do you have work if you're keeping a job? When do you have other extracurricular activities? What are the TV shows that you're going to be watching, or the things that you're going to be doing on a weekly basis? Put all of that regular stuff in there, and then find out what are the spots on your calendar outside of sleep that you can use for studying. And that way you can try to stick to those study schedules that you make based on that calendar. You don't have to stick to it every single day, but it has been known, and the top students know, that the more they stick to a regular schedule of studying, the better. In college, one of the best ways to do it is between classes, because sometimes you have these big breaks between those classes, and you're able to use that time. So mapping things out both in sort of that meta, what's happening throughout the whole semester, and also on a week-to-week basis, will really put you ahead of the game. And again, that's what the top performing students are already doing. The other thing you want to do is, when you go to class, that first day of class, it is totally fine to raise your hand and ask the instructor, is the class heavily based on the book? Is it heavily based on the notes, or is it based on a combination of the two? This is a legitimate question. It's also a very important question, because depending on the answer, that's going to tell you how you need to study for the rest of that class. Now, if you were in a history class that I teach, for example, one of the intro courses, it is almost totally based on the notes. By that I mean the exams are going to be basically based on the notes. I do have a textbook. I provide that textbook for you, but it's pretty much a reference. So any student who is in that class and doesn't know that it's based heavily on the notes, I do try to tell them, but some instructors don't necessarily tell you that. That's why you have to ask. But anyone who is spending a lot of time with the book in that class is not really using their time efficiently, okay? That's the same thing as if the answer is that it's going to, oh yeah, it's going to be based on the book. And I have a lot of classes that I do online that are based totally on the book, and then you have to go to discussion board and do responses based on those books. So then the student who's not paying attention to the book is not using their time. So what you want to do is find out what your instructor is going to be basing the evaluations on more. And a lot of times it might be a combination, and that's where you've got to try and find that balance. But in a situation where it's mostly notes or mostly book, that's going to allow you, if you know that ahead of time, to leverage your time. And again, the top students are asking those questions at the beginning of class. The next thing is not so much just what the top students are doing, but I kind of want to give you a quiz before I actually reveal the answer here. What do those top students consider to be the most important part of learning? And also, very importantly, what do cognitive psychologists who study learning consider to be the important part of learning? And I'm going to give you 4 choices here. All 4 of these, by the way, are very important, okay? It's just that one of them is more important than the others. Intention to learn, that makes sense, right? Because if I have no intent to learn, I'm not going to study. I spent a good deal of my undergraduate years without that intention to learn, and of course I saw the error of my ways eventually, and that's kind of why I got into this in the first place. So intention to learn. Time spent studying. A lot of us think it is, well, the more time I spend studying, the better I'll do. But think about what we talked about on the last slide. If you're spending 10 hours reading the book in a class that's heavily based on the notes, no matter how much time you put in there, if you haven't looked at your notes, you might not do as well as you think. So, but time spent studying, definitely, you do need to put in time. There is no magic answer. There is no quick fix to this. Time is certainly a factor. Having a positive attitude. Most of the people, when I do a live version of this, are going to answer that the answer here is having a positive attitude as being the most important thing, because we know that negative self-talk can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And the more negative we are about these things, the less well we'll do. So conversely, if we have a positive attitude that I can do it, that's going to help us. And there is some evidence to show that. And then the final choice in this is what I think about when I study. Okay? So the actual answer to this is, it's what I think about when I study. Even though all the other choices are important, even though they all make sense and you have to have those, what I think about when I study, which really means that I am practicing what Dr. Stephen Chu from Samford University calls deep processing. Okay? This is the practice of thinking not just in a very passive way about what you're studying, but thinking in a very deep, involved way. So that means the difference between, well, my instructor gave me a review sheet, I'll go over it once and I've studied for the test, versus going through the notes every day, rewriting your notes, rewriting your notes, thinking about it, answering questions that you come up with, answering any practice questions that the instructor has given you, doing a thing kind of like a concept map, where you put one word in the center of the page and then put all the things around it. These are the things, what we mean by deep processing is to really think deeply about the work. One of the things that you can do with deep processing is there's a link to Dr. Stephen Chu's video. It actually has a series of 5 videos that he does. They're all great. I like video number 4 because he gives you a really, just great explanation of deep processing in that particular video. So maybe go watch video 4 and then you can go back and watch the whole series. Okay. To that end, what I just talked about in terms of your notes is you want to review your notes as soon as possible. The sooner you look at your day's notes after class, the better you're going to recall them. So always try to review your notes either right after class or at least that same day. Now, don't get, worried if you can't do it that same day. Again, just as soon as possible. And again, the top students know that this is a strategy that works. Like I said before, you want to be deeply involved. Think of ways to condense those notes. think of questions that your instructor might ask, talk about the notes, make that idea of a concept map where you're writing down the things that you know about. Just get involved with those notes on more than just a rereading your notes level. If you're just rereading your notes, unless you have a photographic memory, that is not going to be enough to master the material for when you have an exam or other work that's due based on that material. The other thing is that you want to review your notes often. So every class worth of notes should be reviewed, thought about, condensed at least 2 more times between your first review and any exam or test. For a class that has an exam and then you go on with new material, you might be able to ignore that material before in a class where it doesn't build up. But in courses that have a cumulative exam, you may have to keep going back to that material. Math classes, science classes, things like that that do continually build, you do want to make sure to not just review the notes for the upcoming exam, but review the previous notes as well. So that's kind of 2 levels with your notes, is you want to review them early, as soon as you get them, and then you want to review your notes often. The idea of using your text, we used to call this a long time ago mapping your text, where you would look for boldface words, definitions, look at the illustrations, look at the material on the side, on the margins of the page. Now, most texts come with, at the end of a chapter, at the end of a section of a chapter, summaries or reviews. And if you can read these summaries or reviews at the end of each chapter, before you begin reading the chapter itself, that is going to give you this map of what's going on, this familiarity with the material that, again, the top students find to be incredibly helpful. Sometimes the last thing you want to do when you have to read that book, right, is have to look at more material. But believe me, if you can take a look at those summaries ahead of time, that is what the top students are doing and what seems to work for them. And they're not just reading them. They're looking at them, and again, they're thinking deeply about them. Once they read the first summary, they're thinking, okay, what is this telling me? What is the new information? What are the words? Who are the people? What are the concepts embedded in this? Then they read that summary, they go back to the beginning of the chapter, and they read through the material that was covered by that summary, and then when they run out of that material, they go to the next summary. Then they go back to where they left off at the chapter. Not everything is going to be reviewed and summarized at the end, but the most important things are going to be reviewed and summarized at the end. So that's what you want to pay attention to in terms of your text. If you feel overwhelmed by the comprehension of your text, you're not alone. And that's another thing. You've got to forgive yourself, right? You're thinking, oh, all the other students, they can just read their text and understand it. No, even the top students don't just read it and understand it. They have to put a lot of work into it. And again, that's that deep processing, whether you're talking about your notes, whether you're talking about your text. These are things that you have to put a great deal of time, and only very rarely does it come easy to only a few students. The top students really work very hard at what they're doing. We're only experiencing things in our own minds, so we don't know what the other people are going through, but you have to trust that that's true, because that's what the top students report out. Learn from your old tests. Find out what you did wrong, and also, here's something I would suggest to you. When you get your exam back, even if you only got a 50%, that means you did half of it right. What are the things that you're really strong at? When you find out what your strengths are, that's going to guide you as to what you need to look at. Now, not every instructor gives you the old exams. Sometimes they just post the answers, but when you are fortunate enough to get those old exams, try to learn from those, especially in a class that's going to be building throughout the semester and will have a cumulative exam available for you. Don't just, okay, that test is done and now I'm going on. You want to be able to learn from what that was. And find out, hey, maybe I don't do well at the multiple choice, or maybe my essays aren't what they need to be. But usually there's this repeating pattern of the successes that you have on your test and the ones that you need to work on, and those are the ones you want to find out. And if you do get that exam back, the best thing you can do is talk with your instructor about that exam. Not in sort of a, hey, why didn't I get this right, or what went wrong here, but sitting down with them and really being sincere about wanting to to learn. Instructors in college they have office hours. They want to see you. They want to hear from you. I know instructors. I am an instructor, and one of the things instructors complain about is that the students don't come to see them. So they are not going to think badly or poorly of you if you go in to talk about an exam or you go in to talk about something. And again, the top students are the ones who are availing themselves, who are, going in to see their instructor. So that's what you want to try and emulate, that top student mentality of senior instructor. And then finally, support services. In the program, there are going to be tutors who are available, whether they're through the tutorial center in the Student Success Center or whether they're attached to the particular class. Use those tutors. Those tutors are the experts in their field. They've already done well in the class. They've been trained. They have gone through training themselves. They have worked with the instructor, and the instructor has approved them. And they go through continuing education as well to be a tutor. And it's really like studying with someone who's already an expert in the field. The idea is you have to study anyway. You might as well go ahead and study with someone who's passed the class. It's going to be, again, maximizing your learning. And then finally, we also have available learning strategies tutors who can work with you on things like note-taking, who can work with you on things like time management, on test reviewing, on text comprehension. So these are all of the services that you have. And again, we find in the tutoring center that when we look at who's using our services, it's many times, again, who? Those top students. So all of these things are what those top students are doing. And again, as I said, I'm not trying to tell you what you need to do, but if you want to succeed in college, one of the things is to emulate what those top students are doing already. I hope you found this helpful. Again, my name is Mike Kassel. I'm the coordinator of tutorial services here in the U of M Flint Student Success Center, and I'll be happy to have you email me and ask any questions that you have about anything related to your own academic support. So good luck to you.